Well, it's certainly true that George Muller's prayer life spilled over very clearly into the day-to-day contact that he and his staff had with the orphan children in the orphan houses. Um, Perhaps I ought to say two things about George Muller's work amongst the orphans. That the first thing was that although he was a man of great care and he loved the children and he wanted to see those children saved from some of the misery that many of them were actually involved in, the real reason why he actually established the orphan house was to demonstrate that God answered prayer. That was the key thing, that God still answers prayer in his day as he did in the New Testament times. And because of that, of course, prayer was woven through the fabric of the orphan houses in every way, and children were taught the basics of the Christian faith and were taught what it was to pray. And there's plenty of evidence that George Muller prayed regularly for and with the children and his staff. And the other factor, of course, is that George Muller did really care for these orphan children. He wanted to see them grow up to become pillars of the church and to be saved. And there's plenty of examples of many of the children who had made commitments to follow Jesus as a result of both their time in the orphan houses and George Muller's prayer for them. And he wanted to pray even ordinary things like that they would get on well with their studies and their work, that they would find jobs. And he was integral in that process of finding them jobs at the end of their time in the orphanage. And so he would pray for them. And he particularly instituted, when children left the orphan houses, then he would give them a Bible and he would give them some clothes, things to go away to their apprenticeships or their life of service if they were girls, but that they would leave with his prayers, and he would pray earnestly for them. He also prayed for the orphan children when things went wrong as well, and it was rare, but it did happen that some of the orphan children were expelled from the orphanage because of their ill behaviour. And there was one recorded instance of George Muller praying for this young boy who was actually being sent out of the orphanage, but he prayed with tears flowing down his cheeks because he felt so distressed that this boy was actually leaving his care and wanted to see God's protection for him in whatever life was to come after the orphan houses. So prayer was a very, very important part. And if you talk to many of the orphans who are still alive today, they will say that one of the things that they learned was how important prayer was in the orphan houses.